I. When I stepped off the plane, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. The conference had been a whirlwind, a mix of professional growth and personal revelations. I felt like a new person, confident and ready to tackle anything, but as I walked through the doors of our home, something was different. My husband, Mark, was standing there, staring at me like I was a stranger. He didn't say a word at first, just stood there with a puzzled expression. "Mark," I said, setting my bag down and moving closer to him. "It's me." His eyes narrowed, scanning me from head to toe. "You look different," he said finally, his voice tinged with confusion. I laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Well, I did get a haircut," I offered, trying to lighten the mood, but it was more than that. His gaze felt distant, like he was trying to piece together a puzzle that didn't quite fit. "No, it's not just that," he said, shaking his head. You're not the same." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What did he mean? I'd only been gone for a week. Sure, the conference had been transformative. But was it possible I'd changed so much that my own husband didn't recognize me? I tried to laugh it off, but the tension in the room was palpable. "Mark, it's me. Your wife. Come on. Stop being silly." He took a step back, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite identify. Was it fear? Doubt? Whatever it was, it made my heart race. "Prove it," he said suddenly, his voice low and steady. "Tell me something only my wife would know." My mouth went dry. "Mark, this is ridiculous," I said, but the look on his face told me he wasn't joking. He was serious. Deadly serious. I racked my brain trying to think of something, anything that would convince him. "Your favorite song is Don't Stop Believin' by Journey. You hate cilantro. And you always leave your socks on the bathroom floor even though I've asked you a million times not to." For a moment, his expression softened, and I thought I'd gotten through to him. But then he shook his head again. "Anyone could know that," he said. "Tell me something real, something only you and I share." My heart sank. This wasn't a game. He truly didn't recognize me. "The night we got engaged," I began, my voice trembling, "you took me to that little Italian restaurant on Main Street, the one with the checkered tablecloths and the candles and wine bottles. You were so nervous you knocked over your water glass, and when you finally worked up the courage to propose, you forgot the ring in the car." His eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of recognition, but just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. "That doesn't prove anything," he said, his tone icy. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Mark, what is going on? Why are you acting like this?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking as lost as I felt. "I don't know," he admitted. "But something doesn't feel right. You're not the same. And I can't explain it." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see that I was still me, but deep down I couldn't deny that he was right. I wasn't the same. The conference had changed me in ways I hadn't fully realized. I'd discovered a side of myself I didn't know existed, a side that was bold, confident, and unapologetic. And now, standing in front of my husband, I wondered if that change was too much for him to handle. Over the next few days, things only got worse. Mark's distance grew, and I felt like I was living with a stranger. Every conversation was strained, every interaction laced with tension. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, and it was tearing us apart. One night, as we sat in silence at the dinner table, I couldn't take it anymore. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, setting down my fork. He looked up, his expression guarded. "About what?" "About us. About what's going on. You've been acting so distant, like you don't even know me." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Because I don't," he said finally. "You're not the same woman who left for that conference. Something happened while you were gone, and I don't know how to deal with it." I felt a surge of anger and frustration. So what? You're just going to give up on us because I've changed? People change, Mark. That's life. It's not just that you've changed, he said, his voice rising. It's that I don't even recognize you anymore. It's like you're a completely different person. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the man I'd built my life with. I'm still me, I whispered. Maybe I've grown, maybe I've changed, but I'm still the same woman who loves you. He didn't respond, his silence cutting deeper than any words ever could. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't make him see me if he wasn't willing to look. The days turned into weeks, and the distance between us grew. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain of losing the man I'd once thought I'd spend my life with, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us, and there was no going back. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I found myself scrolling through photos of us on my phone, memories of happier times when we were inseparable and nothing could come between us. I wanted to believe we could get back to that. But deep down, I knew the truth. The woman in those photos wasn't me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Mark and I had always promised to love each other through thick and thin. But what happens when the person you've become isn't the person your partner fell in love with? It was a question I didn't have an answer to, and it haunted me every single day. As I sat there, lost in thought, I realized that the only way forward was to be honest, with myself, with Mark, and with the world. Maybe we could find a way to rebuild what we'd lost. Or maybe we'd have to let each other go. But either way, I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo, pretending everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. And so, with a deep breath, I made a decision. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be, because sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go of the past and embrace the unknown. A week later, I sat down with Mark, determination in my heart despite the lump in my throat. We need to talk, I began. This time, I wasn't going to let fear or hesitation hold me back. He looked at me, his expression weary. About what? About us, I said firmly. I've realized something. The woman you married isn't the woman sitting in front of you now. I've changed, Mark. And I'm done apologizing for it. His brow furrowed, and for a moment I thought he'd argue, but instead he just nodded, urging me to continue. At the conference, I learned so much about myself, what I want, who I am, and what I'm capable of. And yes, that's changed me. But I'm still me, Mark. I'm still the woman who loves you, who wants this to work. The question is, can you love who I've become? The silence that followed was agonizing. Mark stared at me, his eyes filled with emotions I couldn't decipher. Finally, he spoke. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can. The honesty in his words was a knife to my heart, but I respected him for it. At least he wasn't pretending. Then maybe it's time we figure out what that means, I said, my voice steadier than I felt inside. Because I can't keep living like this, Mark. I deserve someone who sees me for who I am now. Not who I used to be. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in weeks I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, understanding perhaps. You're right, he said. We both deserve that. We decided to take a step back, to give each other space to figure out what we truly wanted. It wasn't an easy decision, but it felt like the right one. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on, but about letting go when the time comes. As I packed a bag and prepared to stay with a friend for a while, I felt a mix of emotions: sadness, relief, fear, and hope. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own destiny. I kissed Mark goodbye, a bittersweet moment that felt like the end of an era. I hope you find what you're looking for, I told him. You too, he replied, his voice filled with genuine warmth. And as I walked out the door, I realized that this wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning, a chance to rediscover who I was, to embrace the person I'd become, and to create a life that felt authentic and true. Because in the end, life is about change. It's about growth, transformation, and the courage to face the unknown. And for the first time, I was ready to embrace it all.